Fru Kathrina and Arvid stood again beside her blooming balsams, looking over their flowery tops upon the shore. The day was as calm and clear as autumn, in its most amiable mood, could display. But Fru Kathrina's heart was sad and heavy, for this was the third day since her husband's departure, and he had not yet been heard of. Lieutenant Per had gone out to inquire amongst the fishers, who had just returned home from a considerable distance, if they had not seen the pinnace, which most probably would be cruising in the direction they had come from. But to Fru Ahnmann's great vexation, old Askenberg delayed his return much too long, and she was just preparing to go herself in search of information, when Arvid came rushing in with impetuous haste that plainly showed the utmost consternation, the most terrible anxiety. "What's the matter, boy? Is the pinnace arrived? Perhaps your father is ill." "The pinnace has not come, mother," replied Arvid, and large tears rolled slowly down his full rosy cheeks. "Well, then, why do you cry, child?" Fru Kathrina held fast with one hand by the corner of the table. Her whole frame shook. She had strength, however, as Arvid made no answer, to repeat the question. "Why do you cry? Tell me, that I may either cry with you or comfort you." "No, no, mother, there is no comfort here," exclaimed Arvid, sobbing aloud. "They say at Neil Asmundsson's that the pinnace will never come back, that she has gone down in the dreadful storm 2 nights ago, for not one of the boats that have come the same way have seen anything of her." Fru Kathrina's trembling limbs would no longer support her. With clasped hands she sunk down on a chair, but her gaze, full of deep, silent grief, was fixed on the ocean. "Where is Uncle Per?" asked she at length, recovering in some degree her usual calm and decided manner. "Is he not coming home?" "He's at Neil Asmundsson's cottage, mother, talking with the men. I was outside the window and heard what they said, and I had thoughts myself, too, when father went away. He looked so kindly at me, and he gave me the watch and bid me keep it carefully, as he had done. Yes, and I will keep it carefully, and every night I will pray to God that I may grow up such a man as my father." Arvid took it from his pocket, the well-treasured watch, kissed it, and wet it with his warm tears. When Fru Kathrina saw the watch, the treasure her husband so highly reverenced, and had so carefully preserved in all times and changes, and saw it in her son's hand, the oppression that lay so heavy at her heart found way. Tears, hot, bitter tears, rolled one by one over her pale cheeks. "Did he give you the watch, child?" she inquired in broken tones. "Why did you not tell me that before?" "Well, I thought if I showed it, perhaps you'd not let me wear it." "Give it to me." Fru Kathrina took the watch, gazed on it with eyes in which agony of mind was more strongly expressed than it could be by words. But her mind was too firm to give way under the first apprehension of misfortune. She rose, with recovered fortitude, and explained to Arvid shortly but distinctly that it would be sinful to grieve over what was not yet certainly known. No one could tell where his father had thought it best to lie on the lookout for smugglers. "Go and ask Uncle Per to come here, Arvid. He will have something to say about it, no doubt." The entrance of the old man made the command unnecessary. "What is all that they are talking about at Asmundsson?" said Fru Kathrina, trying to appear as little apprehensive as possible. "Is there any reason for such suspicions? May not the pinnace be lying concealed in some unlikely place?" "Yes, that is just what I fear," replied the old sailor, his voice trembling with emotion. "I fear indeed, sister, that he lies where no one will look for him." "On the lookout, I mean," said Fru Kathrina, correcting him. Askenberg shook his head. "The pinnace has not been seen since the afternoon she put to sea. And just now a skipper is arrived from Skensö, who sailed yesterday afternoon in the same course past Lyholm. He must have seen her, or leave some trace of her if she had been above water." "Above water? Oh, good God, if my husband has indeed perished, which the Almighty in his mercy forbid, the wreck at least would be found." "No, that's not to be depended on. If she had struck upon anything, she might have sunk in the fog and darkness. The storm that night kept us from shutting an eye, and Armand was always too keen in the service. He often went further than duty and necessity led him. God is merciful. I do not give up hope, said Fru Kathrina with firmness. I will go out myself. Asmundsen will lend us his boat, and we can search every nook between this and Tistelön. No matter. We will make the attempt. The Almighty must surely give some sign. Take the watch with you, Arvid, that we may see how heavily time goes in sorrow. Or rather, let me have it, child. When we come home in grief or joy, you shall have it again. And Asmundsen's boat, with the sorrowing family and several others filled with sympathizing neighbors, put to sea in different directions. Friends and children, said Fru Kathrina, before the boat separated, receive my thanks for the proof of love you give me by taking part in my melancholy search. I am not now able to say better what I feel, but come to me when trouble falls upon you, and you shall not come in vain. The good woman herself took the helm, and as she nodded farewell to right and left, the boats parted, and tearful eyes followed her, who was now setting out on her sad and hazardous voyage. So beloved and respected was the peaceful little family, scarcely a soul was to be found who was not anxious to go in search of the honoured father and husband. 3 long days the dreary quest lasted. They even touched the shore of Tistelön, and the brazen-faced Haraldson, who was standing on the pier, lamented that the brave officer should have fallen a sacrifice to his zeal. It was somewhat too bold, however, added he, in the night and in such a storm and mist, to venture near such a coast as ours. Well, did you not tempt the storm yourself that night? Inquired old Askenberry, and looked steadily at Haraldson. Well, that I did truly, replied the latter with hearty assurance, well knowing that any of his people might easily betray him so far. But I was forced to give in, for such a night I have seldom been out in, well used as I am to coarse weather. And you did not see a trace of the pinnace? Neither of that, nor of anything else. The party returned disconsolate to the village. Not a shadow of suspicion fell upon Haraldson, for the crime was of too unheard of a nature to be even once imagined, and there seemed no reasonable ground for doubt that the vessel had struck in the night and gone down. Days and weeks passed. Neither pinnace nor crew appeared. A new officer was appointed to the station, and Fru Kathrina, with a breaking heart, removed her balsams and all her little property to another cottage. Here she carefully arranged everything as well as she could to make it comfortable for her son and Lieutenant Pat, who faithfully followed her in joy and woe. But for her own part there was no longer a spot on earth she could look upon as her home. I go about here, she would sometimes say to old Askenberry, like a pilgrim who journeys on as long as the Lord pleases, but my real life is in heaven, where my husband is gone before. Praise be to the Almighty even when he chastens. I was as happy as any creature could be, had so much to rejoice in, but prosperity is not always good for our proud hearts. I see that now clearly enough, since misfortune has taught me to weigh my own powers. Old Askenberry had the utmost respect for Fru Kathrina, and the simple dignity and true piety with which she bore her sorrow, but he could by no means elevate himself to the same degree of firmness. He often murmured over the extraordinary fate which permitted the virtuous and upright to be taken away in their best and most useful days, while on the contrary the vicious, the false-hearted, and the idler constantly sailed before the wind. "And which do you think is most to be envied?" inquired Fru Kathrina, in a tone that went to the heart of the honest old sailor. "The most to be envied? Well, now, that's an odd sort of question. A very puzzling kind of question, sister. I can't just say that I think either of them much to be envied, for if one considers that—" "Let us have no roundabout arguments," interrupted Fru Kathrina gravely. "I would not wish that the boy there should hear his godfather hesitate to give a direct answer to such a question. Tell me, Arvid, which would you rather be, an honest, upright man pursued by misfortune, or gain all worldly advantages at the price of selling your conscience and treading the paths of vice?" Oh, it's very certain, mother, that I would rather battle with all the evils in the world than be such a wretch as to cause grief to those who love me, replied Arvid. And do not fear, mother, that I shall forget the lessons I learned every day at our evening prayers. A quiet smile just parted Fru Kathrina's lips. She looked at Lieutenant Per, who answered her glance by another, which convinced her that at heart they had the same thoughts, the same trust, although the patient endurance of woman does not always fall to the lot of man. At such times, when anything touched her feelings, Fru Kathrina always went to the window and busied herself with her balsams, and from between their flowery branches tried to catch, unperceived, a glimpse of the wide ocean, while its low, murmuring, never-ceasing song met her listening ear.